welcome to another training of Raffadang School English Department. So this is training or lecture number 6. So as always, we'll start with a little bit of review. Every class we've talked about with 3 parts or steps or phases of teacher planning. What are those? What's the first one? So our first one is to identify the desired results, or what are your goals? Where are you trying to get to? The end of the year, the end of the unit, the end of the week, the end of the class. Okay, and number 2, determine acceptable evidence, assessments. How do you know that every student has reached the goal that you set for them? And then the third step, how do I need to plan? Planning the actual instruction, the activities. What do I need to do in class to get the students ready for the test, for the assessment? So last time we talked about a number of different ideas, techniques, methods you could use in your classroom. Our goal is to try to reduce the amount of teacher talk time and to increase the amount of student time where they are talking, they are applying, they're being creative, they are using the things that they are learning, because that is what will make the most impact on them. That is what will prepare them for the future of however they're going to use English. All right, so what were some of the teaching ideas we talked about last class? What do you remember? So far, we've talked about real-life applications, go to a restaurant, airport, reverse engineering, start from examples, have the students explain what the rules are, think, pair, share, to give everyone an opportunity to participate. Teach your neighbor as a quick review. 1 minute, they talk to each other, summarize the things that they just learned. Warm-ups, doing something the first thing every class so students know it's time to get settled, time to focus on English. Model, assist, watch, leave. That you first show them how to do something, you next help them do something, then you watch, just let them do it on their own, and then they are completely independent in coming up with an example. They're creative in how to apply that information. And we talked about learning centers as a way to get a lot of different activities into the class. Okay, so today we're going to talk about another kind of advanced technique called a jigsaw. Again, this would be fairly difficult to do at the very beginning in a first grade, second grade class, but maybe third, but definitely 4th, 5th, and 6th should be able to do this. But it absolutely requires organization. You have to have a very clear plan about what you're doing. So how it works, in some ways it's kind of like a learning center. You have different activities, but it's more about maybe you're all researching a topic. For example, in 4th and 5th grade, they talk a lot about countries. So you first start and put the class into groups. In each group, they are researching a specific country. This group is China. That group is Russia. This group is United Kingdom and Germany. So we have 4 groups. The groups are working together on their specific country, finding information. Then you take those groups, you take one person from each of those groups, put them into a new group, and now they are the teacher. They have to teach the rest of the members of the group their information. So for example, the student who was in the group on China now teaches the other 3 about China. The student who was doing Japan teaches the other 3 about Japan. Same thing for Germany and United Kingdom. Until students have not just information about one country, but at the end, they have information on 4 different topics, 4 different countries, and they had a chance to be a researcher, to be a teacher, and to be a student as well. So it's a really nice advanced activity. Again, the first time you try it, it could be kind of slow because this is a very new idea, but the more you practice it, the better it will go. And it does give the students the confidence to actually teach each other information. So what do you think? How could you use a jigsaw in your class? So what's a bigger topic? You can break up into 4 different parts or 4 different examples. And next very important teaching strategy is called manipulatives or total physical response. For a lot of students, especially the younger ones, 1st grade, 2nd grade, it is really hard to just sit in a chair all the time and just listen and write down notes. They've been coming from the last 4 or 5 years, they could do whatever they wanted, move around whenever they wanted, and now, suddenly they have to start sitting, asking for permission to move, and it's just a hard adjustment. So, this helps a lot, but it also helps because it helps when we do things different ways, not just always one way, not just listening, but when we move, kinesthetic learning. So with this, if you are learning a group of words, then you need to act them out. If we are teaching students how to do stand, sit, read, write, draw, then we need to do those words as we learn it. So, in so many of your classes, the students know the game Simon Says. So this is a great game that enforces those commands and simple verbs. And they remember it better because they're actually doing it. Not just hearing the word, writing it down, but it's very practical. So manipulatives means more like you are using something. So if our lesson was on vegetables, I bring some vegetables. I don't just say, this is a picture of an eggplant, but I have a real eggplant, in my hand to show them that they can touch, they can feel, they can smell. There's no real smell to an eggplant. Then when they can use more senses, they will remember the information much better. All right, your turn again. How could you use manipulatives or total physical response in your classroom in this next week? Our next strategy is projects, group work.
I didn't have access to a rap battle recently. We're reading books, so that was fun. That's not applicable everywhere, but my kids are really good at rapping, and so we're reading a book right now, and based on the theme of the book, we're working on just grasping the concept of theme, because a lot of things what it means to really grasp, what is the theme, how can I identify a theme and summarize it into a concise, meaningful sentence, just talk about. And so, split them into groups and have them write it with the beat, perform it, and they actually did really well, and they had super fun.
Okay, so as that teacher Meredith was talking about, for her students, they were really not getting the idea of theme, how to pick out a theme. So in a project, she had them write a rap, a song, for what they read. And they were so enthusiastic about this. That was something that made sense to them. That was something they enjoyed doing. So it wasn't really work. So recently you've seen a lot of the videos that the high school has made for students explaining what inspires them or what their hobbies are. So those are really good projects that help them apply the things that they're learning, and it's something that's interesting to them. So we also want to try, when possible, within class to work in groups. This helps students participate. They are helping each other. Even the strong students can help the weaker, and it multiplies your time as a teacher. Many of you have very big classes, and it's just not possible for you to give attention to each student individually. There's just not enough time. So group work helps multiply your efforts, that you can walk around, help where it's needed, but they also have their other students to help them as they're working on a worksheet or an activity or a project. So how can you use a project in your class? After the midterm exams, what's a project you could do for February or March? And as we saw with those videos, it does not have to take up a lot of time. In fact, I think all of those were only filmed at the students' homes. So it did not take up any class time. And the students actually loved doing it like that. So you don't have to take that valuable class time, but you do have to plan well if you're not going to give any time in class to work on it. Another skill or technique you can use in class is discussion or debate. Have just an open-ended question. Like here is an example. The Iraqi government should continue to use national exams to determine college placement and students' future career. So this obviously is a question that students will have very strong opinions, one way or the other. So you can divide the students up into groups, the pro group, the anti-group, or against group. They have to do some research and come prepared. And this gives them the push to work on getting better in English, at explaining things, at convincing, persuading, which are so important. Really one of the most important skills that we can teach students, and one that they really are not going to get if all we do is talk about the test, the national test, the national test. That skill is not important for the test, but it is important for real life. Okay? So what's the discussion you can do in class? And even from a young age, students can do this. You can have a discussion in class about what's the best ice cream flavor, about whether winter or summer is better. The reasons will be simpler, but it gives you an opportunity to build the thinking, the mindset of facts. I support them with reasons. I like summer because reasons. Develop your writing, your speaking, your conversation. Another very helpful technique is to have a word wall. It's a little bit challenging for us since we change classrooms, but in some classrooms there is a space, or if you use the smartboard, it could just be a set thing on the side of your board or on the slide, the opening slide in your class. So it's important that the students can see these words, that a day later, a week later, they can look up and remind themselves, what did that word mean? Oh yeah, I remember. That it's not one week they saw it, they talked about it in class, and then they never returned to the word, never did any review, and then it just fell out of their mind. They forgot it. We have to keep reviewing, keep them aware of these words. So you can do it for the very young, just working on letters, or with more advanced vocabulary words as well. Our last thing for the day, 2-minute review. So you can talk out loud, you can just think to yourself or write some things down. Explain one of the teaching techniques we talked about today. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I will see you next time.